Hey guys, this is Stacy from eatthebite.com, and today I'm going to show you how to cook steak in a Teflon pan. It's actually really easy. We're going to season all sides of a steak with salt and pepper. We're going to heat a little bit of neutral oil in a pan and add the steak. Don't touch it for about 5 minutes and then turn and look at this incredible crust. Let it cook a few more minutes, then add some butter to the pan so we can baste the steak a few times with that. Transfer the steak to a weird meat plate from the 1970s, pour all the butter, fat, and juices over the steak, and let it rest a few minutes before cutting into it. And we've got a perfect medium rare here. So, let me show you how to make it. First things first, I took out my steak to get it to room temperature, and for this tutorial I'm using a 1 pound, 1 inch ribeye steak. This technique will work for pretty much any 1 pound, 1 inch steak. It's really important to season the steak with a light sprinkling of salt and pepper on both sides before cooking. I usually do a light sprinkling of salt and pepper over the top, then turn the steak and do the same thing. A little bit of salt on the top, a little bit of pepper on the top. If you'd like, you can also add a bit of salt around the edges as well. Again, this is a 1 inch steak, and you could do the same with a steak slightly more or less than 1 inch as well. I'm going to add some neutral oil to my Teflon pan and let it heat on medium to high for about a minute to get the pan nice and hot before adding the steak. Once it's hot, we're going to put the steak in the pan. And one thing I do is that I rub the steak around the pan to make sure I've got oil on the bottom of the steak. And that's it. If you want, you can gently press the steak down with a fork just to make sure it's laying completely flat. Now, we're going to let this sear for 5 minutes without touching it so we can get a crust on the outside. At the 5-minute mark, I turned over my steak. I also have a second steak cooking because I'm going to eat one of them when I do the live tasting and use the other steak to take pictures for my website. The second steak was a little bit bigger than the first, so I let it cook about a minute longer than the other one. I cooked the steak for 2.5 minutes on the other side, and if you want to pick up the steak with some tongs and sear around the edges, go for it. Now comes my favorite part. We're adding a couple tablespoons of butter right into the pan. If you've ever wondered why steak tastes so damn good at a restaurant, it's probably because they add butter at the end of the cooking process. We're going to let it melt, tilt the pan very carefully, and baste the steak with the butter by spooning it all over the top of the steak. After the butter baste, just transfer to a large plate. I always use this old 1970s plate when I make steak. Then pour all the juices, butter, and fat on top of the steak. And now you've got to let this rest on the counter for about 5 minutes before cutting into it. After the 5 minutes, I'm going to go right ahead and just cut into the steak so you can see how delicious and how wonderfully medium rare the center is. You can serve the steak with all of your favorite fixings. I love a classic baked potato with sour cream and scallions and some asparagus. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to leave you with the live commentary as I eat this delicious steak. All right, I got my weird cattle horn plate, as I always do. I gotta eat this right now. I'm gonna cut off a chunk. Oh, and look at this. Look at between the steak juice and the butter. We are looking at an absolute feast here. So let me just take it. I don't really want to touch it because no, I'm not gonna do that. Nope, not gonna do it. But you can see, if I flip this piece over, that we're dealing with a very nice pink steak. So I'd say 1 minute less if you want it slightly more rare than this, but this is a great like medium rare to medium, which is my favorite temperature to eat this at. Bite right now. As I mentioned, I got this crazy, I mean, $6.99 for ribeye is absolutely unheard of, so I think they priced them wrong at the store. Oh my God. I mean, you really just can't go wrong with a ribeye. And I don't know the exact situation, but there's only certain times where you can get bone-in ribeye, and otherwise you have to get the boneless. Oh my God. It's so good. When I eat this, like, yeah, you can eat the whole steak if you want. I usually am splitting this with someone, but cut it in half, pour some of the drippings on it, and dig in. And I love this sear. This sear is just incredible. And you can get that with Teflon. You can do it. You don't have to do this in a skillet. You need to salt and pepper your steak. Okay, don't just get out of your state of denial, those of you who are in denial about this. You must season your beef. Get it out on the counter, get it to room temperature, ideally. And get this salted and peppered. And get it in the pan. You're not going to get, like, oh, it's good marbling. You don't need to put oil in the pan. Yes, you do. This is a perfectly cooked, perfectly seasoned, perfectly seared, delicious ribeye steak. There is nothing I love more than the animalistic ritual of eating every little piece of meat along that bone. And I think that's why I just love the bone-in version, because I get to act like a caveman. I'm not going to do that here on camera because it's pretty gross. But I'm a caveman. I'm eating the meat off the bone. And well, I say those things as I'm doing it as well. And there's just so many delicious little corners of this piece. It's all salt, pepper, butter, steak juice, fat, all of it. Delicious. Okay. Again, when I make burgers, especially smash burgers, but any burger, I also hit the pan with some neutral oil, because you have to. Because that's how you're going to get that crust. You're going to get the crust. Oh, there's a little piece of fat in that one. I will treat myself to a little piece of fat occasionally in a piece of steak like this. And it may sound gross, but and I will, every little drip of juice will be gone by the end of this. And I know, like, oh my God, there's so much butter. Yeah, exactly. If you've ever eaten a steakhouse, I guarantee you the secret to why it's so much better than any steak you can make at home is because they pour butter all over it. All right, so I'm gonna go off camera because I'm probably gonna eat this whole thing. And then I'm gonna eat like a caveman and get every little, my teeth, and I gnaw at it like an animal. And I hope you do too, because that's how delicious it is. So that's how you make a pan-seared, really great seared, crusty steak in a Teflon pan. It can be done. You don't have to do this in a skillet. You don't have to do it in a stainless steel or aluminum or whatever the other pans are. You can do it right in a Teflon pan.